Welcome to the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity podcast with Mike Mazie, CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former state senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. Mike talks with public policy and industry leaders about needed transformative changes to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for people to live, work, and retire. The Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is advancing ideas and policy that create growth and prosperity for the people of Oklahoma.
I'm real excited. I get to spend some time with my longtime friend, Dan Sullivan. We were in the state legislature together for many years, and then the board of GRDA gave him a phone call and said, "We got a mess on our hands. Please help us come fix it up." We'll get to that, but Dan's been a successful practicing attorney, CEO now of the Grand River Dam Authority, and more importantly, the father of two wonderful kids that keep he and his wife, Melanie, busy. So give us a little update on what's going on with Joseph and Cora.
Well, they're growing up too fast, and a lot of activities. School time is always a big time to try to keep up and with all the things that they have going on. But they're doing well. They're ready for spring break and looking forward to getting this year finished. So thank you.
Where's the spring break excitement? Here in town or somewhere on the road?
We're headed on the road this evening and looking forward to spend some time with family.
That's great. So if we go backwards in time a little bit, when you and I were in the legislature, GRDA had kind of a bad reputation in terms of how things were being run professionally, administratively. It seemed like a political patronage job. Obviously, GRDA is real important cog in, the universe of utilities and using energy for, the people of Oklahoma. So tell us a little bit on that transformational experience that you went through, Dan, and how you helped the organization get to a little bit better level of transparency, I should say, accountability and professionalism.
Well, thanks again, Mike, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about GRDA. And, one of the first things that I really wanted to focus on was trying to depoliticize the organization, take the politics out of hiring, out of any operational issues, and increase communication with our customers. There had been a very contentious relationship there with several of our municipal customers in the past. And trying to kind of repair those relationships, restore integrity internally and externally. And I think that we've really started to make some great improvements there. One of the things that we did was come up with what we call our 5 E's of excellence. We refer to ourselves as an agency of excellence. And the 5 E's include, our employees, making sure that we take care of our human capital. One of the most important things to making any organization run. Electricity, being able to provide that on a reliable and low-cost basis. Our environmental stewardship that we have always been involved with since day one. The economic development piece, where we're involved with a lot of growth in the Northeast Oklahoma area in particular. And then lastly, efficiency. If we're going to ask our customers to pay more for the same product, we want them to have some level of understanding that we're being as efficient as we can, but we all know that, cost of doing business has certainly continued to increase.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you want to be somewhat, apolitical in your CEO role, but I still can't help, Dan, but exalt your accomplishments as an example that, Oklahoma conservative Republicans like to get in there and fix things that aren't working. Yeah. And, when I run across particularly members of the board, they're just so pleased with the level of professionalism that you brought to the organization. Now, as you know, I'm a small business owner. We've got offices in 3 different cities, and I've got 30 employees, and it's kind of fun. But you've got lakes and rivers and 1,200 miles of transmission lines and 500 employees. You focus on these 5 E's. How have you found the right approach to managing this this big enterprise that's so important to the state of Oklahoma, and how do you keep up with it all?
Well, keeping up is a challenge. Having a great team. Thankfully, it's been real easy for me to find people that are smarter than me to work in GRDA, and so that makes my life a lot easier. But I think knowing that we exist to serve our customers, and sometimes those customers are internal customers, and we need to consider that when we think about the support systems, the support operations that we have. Those often serve our internal customers. And continuing to have that customer-centric idea has really made a big difference. We don't exist to do anything but serve our customers, and that's the mindset that we've tried to instill. And when you think about how can we better do that, how can we be more efficient, how can we make sure that electricity is reliable, that's a really important factor to our customers. Every time someone flips the light switch, they expect the lights to come on, and that's the expectation that we live with on a daily basis. So it really helps us be able to put together a customer-centric focus. But we also, one of the big things for me has been promoting this idea of what we call one GRDA. We are one organization. We're not administration. We're not hydropower. We're not just thermal generation. We're not transmission and distribution. We are one organization serving our customers, and that is broken down. It takes a long time to make those transitions, but breaking down those barriers internally has been another important factor.
That's really terrific. So you've got this big portfolio of hydropower and wind and coal and natural gas, and you've actually become somewhat of a leader in the field. Not that I understand all that you've kind of explained to me and taught me over the years, but this GRDA unit number 3 is kind of special in its own right. What is that doing for the system, and why is it so important to your broad mix of creating electricity?
Well, our Unit 3 is a Mitsubishi unit. At the time we started commercial operation in 2017, it was the most efficient unit in the Western Hemisphere. It's still close to that, and as technology continues to advance, newer units are coming out. But the idea is that with the combined cycle unit that is, you take a unit of natural gas, you fire a turbine like a jet engine laying on its side that then turns a generator. The exhaust from that is then captured in what's called a heat recovery steam generator. So you get steam, and then another cycle where it goes through another turbine and another generator set to produce energy. So you have one input of energy that then goes through 2 cycles. The combined cycle is the idea there. So it is very efficient. It was developed by Mitsubishi, primarily for the Asian market, where they have very high fuel costs. So they want to be as efficient as they can. So we have been able to implement that here in Oklahoma, burning Oklahoma natural gas at a much lower price point for fuel, and that's been a tremendous benefit to our customers. The other significant thing about gas units is that they ramp up and down very quickly. Coal units that we've relied on for many years, they were designed to turn on, you run them for 6 months, you take them down for maintenance, and then you start them up again, you run them for another 6 months. And there was very little, up and down movement, and it was a slow movement. Think of it as like a battleship. It takes a while to get that turned. Well, these are more like race cars.
Okay.
You can throttle them up and down. The cold start is, under 30 minutes. Where a cold start for a coal unit is 16 hours. We're in the process of building what we're calling Unit 4, which will be right next to our existing gas unit, a simple cycle unit. So it's just the gas turbine part of it without the steam cycle. And that will be about a 10-minute cold start to operational status. So in dealing with the market today, in the electricity market, we're all in Oklahoma part of the Southwest Power Pool. Being able to respond to changes, when the wind lays down or the sun's not shining and there's a change in operational needs, these quick start responsive units are very important to maintaining the integrity of the grid.
Okay. So we're taking advantage of good old Oklahoma produced natural gas, and it's an efficient way to produce electricity. Yet I find it somewhat bizarre, Dan, that you still have these, liberal elite voices that want to cast a pall over, any type of fossil fuel, even though it seems to me you all, as well as others in the industry, have found a way to be, good stewards with, low emissions. But, there was literally an article about you all a couple of months ago from a Oklahoma-based professor. I'm not going to say his name, but I quote from the article, "This gas plant would emit potent greenhouse gases, thus contributing to the climate crisis that causes frequent extreme weather while being less reliable during those events." How do you refute this type of nonsense with actual facts?
Well, one of the more kind of frustrating parts of that article was his suggestion that our board didn't do its due diligence in evaluating all of the other options. So we're replacing a coal unit with a natural gas unit that has lower emissions, higher efficiency, and quicker start and more responsive. So the problem with his premise and the problem with people that speak of things that they really don't understand is that in order to implement more what we call intermittent resources, wind and solar primarily, you have to have either thermal backup in some form or fashion, so coal or natural gas, or nuclear. Nuclear is great, but it has zero emissions or zero carbon emissions. But those again aren't quick ramping. So you need something like a natural gas unit to implement more intermittent resources. We are in Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plains, so we have a lot of wind resources available to us, but they're not always there. You can't say, "I want the wind to blow right now," and make it happen. Right. We'd all be in a different business if that was the case. But, you can say, "I want to turn this gas unit on," and you can start it up and make it run when you need it. And that's the important thing, to maintain the integrity of the grid. The last point I want to make is that, there's a lot of people that have this focus on, trying to reduce our emissions, and we want to be responsible in the way we do that. But it's also my responsibility to, in our portion of the grid, to maintain reliability. Again, so that the lights come on when the customer flips the switch. If you don't think electricity is important, then turn it off and see how that goes. If we relied solely on intermittent resources like wind and solar, there would be a very unstable grid, and we wouldn't be able to give you 24-hour service.
Yeah, those strange people in California think that's the future. But
Right.
so if you're listening to this and you're in California, come to Oklahoma. Everything's going to be more reliable and less costly. Now, you and I.
Let me make one other quick point about that.
Sure.
There's a lot of discussion about how, in the SPP footprint, which is kind of the middle part of the country, from the Canadian border down to the Texas border. But, as I said, we've got a lot of wind resources. There are times when we've had very high penetration of wind resources to maintain the grid, up in the 90%. Well, the situation with that, though, is we're talking about 2 o'clock in the morning. So you have a lower load, so it makes it easier to have a higher percentage when you have a lower demand.
I see.
But that's when wind is most reliable. It's a little counterintuitive, but the nighttime hours, the early morning is the best time to count on wind, not during the day.
Not during the day. So everyone's frustrated with, inflation post the pandemic, and everybody feels like their costs are going up. And, for folks out there with GRDA bills or OG&E bills or PSO bills, for those of us from Tulsa, there have been an increase in, their bills for this thing or another thing or inflation. But I don't think a lot of people realize that our electricity costs are truly the lowest in the nation. So how do you monitor that? How do we compare, versus other states out there? How do your customers, rank in costs, if you will, versus other electricity users out there in America?
Well, if you look at Oklahoma as a whole, we have very competitive rates. Most residential rates are in the 10 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour basis, which is about half of what you see if you go to California and other parts of the country. You can get industrial rates that are even cheaper because you're delivering at a higher voltage, less cost associated with that, less infrastructure to support large industrial loads. So we're in a situation where it's very easy for us to compete nationally for new business coming into this area. One, because we have very low and competitive prices in general in Oklahoma. We think that GRDA is a big part of that, but we also have a very business friendly environment, which makes a big difference when somebody's looking at coming. We actually enjoy people coming to Oklahoma, making those investments and hiring Oklahomans to do the jobs that we need.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in Oklahoma, you and your organization, have a big role to play in more economic growth, new companies coming here, job growth. I don't think people understand the collaboration that you have sometimes with Mid-America Industrial Park, or folks that want to locate, close to the Port of Catoosa, or even the, Oklahoma Department of Commerce. Why don't you share with our listeners how you participate and, get information to these folks that are thinking about, oh, I'm from Solana, I might want to put a plant in northeastern Oklahoma. What are my electricity costs going to be?
Well, a relationship with the Mid-America Industrial Park. GRDA is a very unique organization. We were created by statute. We finished the Pensacola Dam that creates Grand Lake in 1940. That was the run-up to World War II, at least our U.S. involvement in World War II. Mm-hmm. So the federal government retained control over the dam through the war and then turned it back to GRDA in 1946 and 1947. And at the time that we started production in 1940, a big part of our power was sent to what was known as the Oklahoma Ordnance Works Authority in Pryor, Oklahoma, which built and manufactured powder for munitions. When the war was completed, that was turned over in 1960 to the state in trust, and is now known as the Mid-America Industrial Park. So
That's
we've literally and figuratively been connected from day one. So all of those businesses that are in the industrial park are our retail customers. Those are our only retail customers. Everything else we do is selling on a wholesale basis to the city of Wagner, where I grew up, or Tahlequah, or Stillwell, or Stillwater, and all the other communities that we serve. But those businesses, like Google, that's their number 2 facility in the world in terms of size, and they've announced that they've had over a $4.5 billion investment in that facility.
Wow.
It's a tremendous asset for them, but it's a great asset for Oklahoma to have something of that nature, and that just shows that how competitive we are on the national and global basis for our costs. So as we look at new industries that are coming, a lot of high tech, clean tech type industries and manufacturing, one of the largest expenses that they have are utilities, and primarily electricity. So, that gives us a tremendous leg up, and is really a big factor that we have, not just for GRDA, but as I said, across the state. Our competitive advantage is that we, great place to do business, and we have low costs and low barriers to come into the state. So those are great things for us to have, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be part of that. We're constantly seeing businesses literally by the week looking at the Mid-America Industrial Park and other places around the state. So we anticipate some good news to be coming very soon on that.
That's great. Let's unpack that a little bit more. As you see the 21st century economy, unfolding, and this long, beneficial history with the Mid-America Industrial Park, you mentioned this a little bit, but I thought maybe you could broaden the perspective on, what are the industries, what are the companies maybe that are already in the industrial park that a good example of, in this 21st century economy, high-paying jobs, great for northeastern Oklahoma, not just the leadership of these companies, but, all these workers. Where do we have this competitive advantage in certain economic clusters? What do you think are those specific industries that are going to be looking at Oklahoma now, thanks to the work that you all do?
Well, some of the higher profile, industries are data centers, which are, growing across the country, with AI and other, additional needs coming online, that's more need for them to build facilities. But, electric vehicle manufacturing has been a hot topic in the news. That's really cooled off lately, and that's why one of the companies that was looking at the industrial park kind of pulled back because they made batteries for electric vehicles. So that market's changed, but what I see though are a lot of higher tech, kind of clean tech type, where people are literally wearing the white suits because it's a clean environment, that they're manufacturing all kinds of new equipment, computer chips, solar panels, a lot of other industries like that have been looking at this area. And, those are good paying manufacturing jobs that are, part of the future. We want to be embedded in, what's brought us here. The oil and gas industry, aviation continues to be a big part. But we also need to look to the future of, what are some of those business types that are going to be able to take us to the next level. We've got a manufacturing company. It's actually a foundry in the park. It's one of the older businesses there, American Castings. And they make parts for Jeep. They make parts for farm implements. And, they continue to add new lines, add new opportunities. And that's just one example of many there that, and some are in the aerospace industry, some are in more defense-related industries, and then we've got, Google and others that are in the tech. So it's great to see that wide variety of businesses. I like to see more smaller businesses than one huge, because we continue to leverage
Absolutely.
the opportunities that way. But it's great to see that there's so much interest. Our physical location in the country, makes us a very popular place to look. With the inland waterway nearby, rail, highway, interstate systems. We're on the list of everyone that's looking at a big project, because these big mega sites and even the smaller, more traditional size sites, there's fewer and fewer of those available, that people can count on a quick turnaround to be able to, to build a facility.
And this whole ecosystem of the Mid-America Industrial Park and the work that you're doing, with GRDA, it spawns this whole sort of cottage industry or further economic impact. Google may have, I don't know, 1 million square feet of space. It's some enormous number. And these wonderful jobs that pay 75,000, to 100-some thousand a year spawn all of this other stuff to, support these people moving into Northeast Oklahoma, and it just kind of feeds on itself. So it's a wonderful opportunity for the state. Is that new tourist park in Veneta going to need some electricity?
They will. That's not something that we'll be serving, but we hope that is successful.
Okay. So while we've got your expertise, we want to tackle one sort of controversial topic that's in and out of the news occasionally. It's kind of the aftermath of Winter Storm Uri, and you're kind of the expert that can help a bunch of us, for which this has been a head scratcher, and I can never get too far away from my financial nerd roots. But after or during Uri, obviously some states like Texas were in big trouble, and a lot of their customers in the winter of 2021 went without power, and they had a real mess on their hands. In Oklahoma, it was natural gas that I think helped us and helped our communities stay lit up. But there was some strange stuff going on where the price of natural gas went up 1,000% overnight, and this wasn't from the drillers or the producers. It seemed to be the marketers and the distributors of natural gas after it had been collected. And a couple of the for-profit, utility companies all of a sudden, had this, enormous expenses to keep the lights on. And they went to the state leaders and said, we got to recoup this cost somehow, or our companies are going to have some struggles or some problems or some operational issues. And then that morphed into, just after I had left the state as the Secretary of Finance, into this sort of securitization process. We won't try to dive into it more than that, where the utility companies were allowed to borrow some money, basically, and put the financing costs on that to the taxpayers, the electricity customers of theirs. And what was $1 billion of cost, because of higher interest rates, turned into $3 billion, maybe $4 billion by some estimates of cost. And you don't necessarily want to blame the utility companies either, but there were talks about looking deeper into that have never quite evolved, and maybe if there was price gouging going on by the distributors. So what's your opinion of all that? And does something really need to be looked into deeper to be more mindful of what's fair to all these electricity users and buyers that have seen an increase in their bills because of all this?
Well, when it was that's certainly an episode I hope never to repeat. I remember being on the phone, sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in right now at about 8 o'clock at night during that event, trying to make a decision whether or not we were going to pay over $1,000 in MMBTU for natural gas for the next day, when a week before we were paying $3. So we had to, for this one particular day, which was the highest we paid, was about $1,100 in MMBTU. But we were, our goal and our instruction was to keep the lights on. And even at that, we were at about 50% capacity on our natural gas units because we couldn't get the volume of gas that we needed.
Okay.
For us, that storm event was about $100 million in extraordinary costs for about a 10-day period, which was just astronomical. We had the cash on hand to deal with that. We were able to weather that. The lights did stay on. We had some intermittent times where we had to actually do some curtailments and shut people off for a period of time, but it was very short. That's, again, not something I hope we ever have to do again. But, those costs, and I know the Attorney General and others are continuing to look at that. I've not spent a lot of time trying to dig through, exactly where in that process the gaming occurred. But I can say one thing, going from $3 to $1,000 for the same volume of natural gas in a week, you cannot explain that simply on scarcity. So, if you tripled it, you might be able to say, well, that's because of scarcity. But, to go from those levels of change, did not make any sense to me. The one thing that happened during this event that I thought was really particularly unusual, the ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, where we, buy and sell commodities like natural gas, previous to this had a limit that would not allow the gas prices to go above $1,000. During this event, that limit was taken off. They took the brakes off.
Really? I didn't know that. I know all about ICE.
Yeah. So, why that happened is another mystery to me, which allowed those prices to continue to go up. So it was, a very difficult situation for us. We're not for profit, so we're always trying to find out how we can keep our costs low. We offered, because we had to recover that $100 million of extraordinary costs somehow, we offered our customers a couple of different options. We looked at, there was a securitization type of capability that we had, but we chose not to do that because of the cost associated. But there was a couple of different options where customers could pay their share of that off in 12 months or up to 10 years. And so we've had a variety of ways that our customers have dealt with that. But, it's been a tremendous lesson up and down the industry. I think the natural gas industry is doing their best to try to keep that from happening again. The Texas ERCOT electric market was literally within minutes of complete collapse during that event. And had that happen, you can't just turn those systems back on. It may take weeks to get a system back together. So, there's been a lot of effort by Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and others to try to say, how can we keep this from happening? We saw during this winter storm that we just had in January, there was a lot of import of electricity. About 7,000 megawatts of electricity was moved from the PJM market, which is like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland in that area, into the MISO market, which is the Mid-Atlantic states, and then into SPP. So we were borrowing electricity from the East Coast, and the storms were moving west to east. As the storm moved through and as we were recovering, then we being SPP, the Southwest Power Pool, started sending power back the other direction and returning the favor, if you will. That ability to transport, across those markets is very important But my concern is, what if they don't have it to spare? What do we do then? And that's where the planning continues to keep that from happening again.
Okay. Well, really appreciate your perspective on that. Hopefully, somebody like the AG's office, gets to the bottom of who was making out like a bandit on that difference between $3 and $1,000. I just don't think it's right that all the Oklahomans out there bear not just the cost. I like the way GRDA did it. Here's how we can give you some options versus we're going to borrow all this money and expect all these ratepayers to pay the interest rate on this cost as well on top of it. So it just something needs to be unearthed there.
Well, yeah, I agree, and there's definitely someone that was unduly enriched, to use the legal term, during that period of time. I remember, when we made that decision to buy that gas at that rate, because that was just all we could find. I remember sitting here thinking, some grandmother in Stillwell, Oklahoma, is going to have to pay for this, and those are tough decisions to make, but. We did what we could to maintain a stable grid, because the last thing you want is electric cutoffs when the weather is that bad. People can die, and so it was a bad situation.
And so one last question: a lot of people are worried in the 2024 about bad actors out there who might try to hurt our grids. And I know you spent a lot of time on this. What would you say to electric users out there, at least in Oklahoma? Here are the mechanisms in place that we're aware of, and we want to make sure we address protecting the grid, even though there's some bad actors out there that want to do stuff with viruses and malware and all this sometimes scary stuff.
Well, we look at two different parts of this. One is the physical security side, keeping people out of substations and generation plants and facilities like that, maintaining the integrity of our transmission lines, which is very important to us. We're fortunate enough to have a law enforcement division, and we have people out, following copper thefts and other things. Some of them are a little more on the minor side, but they can create bigger issues. But we also have an officer that's assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the FBI. So we're, privy to information on cyber, other physical threats that are out there. But I can tell you that, electric utilities across this country are, there are attempts to penetrate on the thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of times a day. From bad actors all over the world. And, they just have to be right once, and we have to be right hundreds of thousands of times a day. So, our investment in the infrastructure and, firewalls and all the other protection that we have is very significant to us. But the main thing that, just to the public, is if you see something, say something. If you see somebody just hanging out around a substation and it just doesn't look right, call 911, report it, let somebody check it out and see. It may be legitimate, but it is always good to be aware of what's going on. We need to think about that no matter what we're doing. And if something looks strange, it probably is. So let's report it and let some people check it out. Don't check it out yourself. Just call and let the professionals
check it out yourself, folks. Call 911.
That's right.
Great conversation. Thanks so much, Dan, for the great work you do to keep the lights on in Oklahoma. And we appreciate everybody spending some time with us. Have a great day.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
The Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is advancing ideas and policy that create growth and prosperity for the people of Oklahoma.